Hello, buddy. Welcome back to the Tin Man's Core channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and today I'm reading the final chapter out of this Bigfoot Terror Tales Vol.1 book, and it's called Bigfoot vs. Grandpa by Eric J. Guignard. And I might have to end up reading multiple parts because this story is kind of long, so let's just jump right into it, shall we? Grandpa, what really happened to your hand? Freddie asked. What's on my hand? No, what happened to it? Why don't you have it anymore? Oh, this here? I thought you knew already. It was bit off by a Sasquatch. That was back in the early spring of 1889. Freddie paused, waiting for his grandpa to elaborate with a colorful yarn. Grandpa didn't, and went back to absent-mindedly reading a Jack London novel. Cover crumpled and pinched from the imprints of the old man's split-hook left hand. Freddie and his grandpa sat on opposite ends of a sagging linen couch. Dad said you had a hunting accident, Freddie announced. Well, I guess that's one way of putting it. I was out hunting a Sasquatch. What's a Sasquatch? Your generation calls him the Bigfoot, but that's just a nickname some dimwit yellow paper journalist called him. It'd be like calling a raven a black feather, just on account that the bird has black feathers. Not very inventive, if you ask me. Yeah, I know, but it's stuck now because people found a big footprint and probably wouldn't have known about the Sasquatch name by that time. It's still all right. Freddie wrinkled his nose as if he smelled something that was beyond ripe. A Bigfoot, Grandpa? There's no such thing as Bigfoot. That's just a fairy tale. Grandpa abruptly sat back, visibly appalled at the heresy that fell across his ears. He looked at Freddie over the top brim of his thick reading glasses and laid the book onto one knee. Tales of foreign adventure instantly forgotten. A fairy tale? Boy, fairy tales are for little girls where knights ride in on horseback and save some broad from an evil witch. Fairy tales ain't true, but the Sasquatch sure is. He's as real as the stink from the summer outhouse. Are you pulling my leg? Your leg? Shoot. I was about to ask you the same question. Sweet mother of Abraham. What do they teach you in school these days? Well, they're not going to be teaching about some folklore legend like Sasquatch, that's for sure. Because people might think you're crazy. Math and reading, I guess. Well then, you need to get to reading about Sasquatch. There's plenty written about him. Sasquatch is a wily beast. He ain't big on socializing. But there's enough folks all over the world that can attest to his living out there in the woods. How come I never seen one? Freddie asked. Have you ever looked for a Sasquatch? Well, no, not specifically. Sasquatch ain't gonna come out to you and declare, boy, howdy. Besides, you don't ever want to see him anyways. So how did you see him? Grandpa let loose a long sigh and a fart. Fred, the senior, would be back in an hour to pick the kid up. He knew he shouldn't, but he figured it was time to tell his grandson about Sasquatch to educate him a little on what lie out there lurking in the shadows of the world. He supposed if his own son and the school system had their way, Freddie would never hear otherwise. Grandpa peered out the dusty window. The sun was starting to go down, and the night bugs were flying up. It was just about the time of dusk when the whole thing had first started. Well, Freddie, I must have been only about 21 or 22 years old back then and was courting your grandmother. I wanted some extra money to buy her pretty things, so I went out trapping with some other fellers up in the mountains. Times sure were different back when I was a young man, he said, scratching the side of his whiskered cheek with the tip of the metal hook hand. Freddie eagerly moved closer to him, turning sideways to sit cross-legged on the stained old cushion. He faced the chronicler of tale directly, eyes lightening up in anticipation. Grandpa went on, like I was saying, it was the early spring of '89. The sun was starting to go down, and the night bugs were flying up. Mosquitoes, gnats, and moths were hovering in the air, fluttering toward the light of the campfire that Curtis had just kindled. The mesquite smoke wandered gently through the darkening air as the men sat down around the fire outside the small log cabin. A tin of beans mixed with rabbit meat simmered over the fire, and the men passed around a bada bang canteen half full of whiskey. The three white hunters sat on one side, and their Indian guides, Joseph, Red Paul, and Tye, sat on the other. Well, boys, it's getting to be slim pickings out here. We've either killed everything off or scared it away. I'm saying it again. After tomorrow, I think it's time to pull in the traps and head on back. The Indian guides looked at Curtis as he spoke, then at each other and shrugged their shoulders. Willie spat into the fire. I ain't ready to go back yet. We've hardly got anything. A few furs and some elk meat. Shoot, I'm agreeable with Curtis. I got a little lady waiting for me back in town that I'm fixing on making an honest woman out of. The longer I'm up here, the more I get to thinking that some other feller's gonna make his move first, Fritz said. Yeah, that's one terrifying thought to have. You already got a gal waiting for you, but then when you get back, she probably might have already made a move on some other guy. So they need to hurry up and get what they need to get and get on back to town. Now, Fritz, why you want to do something dumb like that? I can't sell you an ass that'll kick just as hard, but at least you can put her out in the barn each night. The men chuckled. Even with the marginal stores, they were in good spirits. The recent rain had let up, and worries floated away like the mesquite smoke on the wind. While they sat there, a sudden screaming roar thundered away nearby up the mountain slope. Birds shot out of the trees like arrows darting through the air. The men froze around the fire at the volume of the echoing vulgar sound. Joseph, Red Paul, and Tye spoke click-a-tack stealthily in swift, hushed tones and started to creep away from the others. Fritz grabbed his rifle and stood up in excitement. Sounds like maybe we caught us a bear. I'll go check it out. Willie stood with him. I'll go with you. That don't sound like any bear I've ever heard. They loaded up their rifles, older model Winchesters from post-Civil War industry, and then commenced to jog quickly up a gentle dirt path, brushing through branches of Pacific silver fir and mountain hemlock. The sun had nearly descended from sight, and the sky was now a murky swirl of indigo and maroon. Dark shadows crawled through the underbrush, and twigs snapped ahead. A strange commotion was heard, that of loud grunting and thrashing. Fritz reached the edge of the clearing first. He stopped abruptly under a conifer's thick cover. He knelt down slowly and motioned for Willie to do the same. Before them struggled an image that nightmares were born of. They had caught a monster in their steel bear trap, a monster Fritz could never have imagined, twice the size of a grizzly bear, but black as a fresh tar road. The bear's trapped massive metal jaws were locked tight, slicing through the monster's lower leg. Ow! I could see why he was hollering. Like a skewered summer kebab, the trap's metal jaws were almost as fearsome as the fanged jaws of the monster itself. Cruel and stained from past prey, it sat on its haunches in the dirt, bulky hands each the size of a cooked chicken, trying to figure out how to pull the bear trap apart. The monster grunted and muttered, its mouth opening and closing, revealing glistening sabers of teeth, jutting out from behind swarthy lips like a twisted iron rake. Holy Hannah, what is that? I don't know, Fritz whispered, but I ain't aiming on finding out too closely. He raised his rifle and sighted it on the horrendous beast. The beast swiftly jerked its head when it noticed them in the underbrush. In a rush, it stood up, posturing like a man, and bellowed a shrieking roar at them. Bushes flattened, and Fritz, who was over 30 feet away, felt the roar strike his face like a balmy slap. He fired at the monster, and a spiral of its blood and black ooze flung into the cascading night air. The monster leaped at them, Willie screamed like a Yankee girl and dropped his rifle to the dirt. He spun a wild half circle and fled back down the trail. Fritz tried to load his rifle and fire again, but he quickly started shaking as Willie's panic spread to him. The monster was halted by its first charge from the length of 5-foot chain, bolting the trap into the ground. It grasped the chain with both hands and with another shrieking bellow snapped it apart into flying fragment shards. Man, that Bigfoot's strong. He don't want to stay there that much longer. He's seen them trappers. He wants to go out on a killing spree now. Fritz turned around and followed Willie in a race back to the cabin. Get your guns! Get your guns! He shouted down the trail to the others. He felt the monster's presence behind him, a lurching swinging of a mighty clawed hand. Then the monster stumbled into the brush, buckled by the skewered leg, sunk bear trap and broken chain trailing behind like a devil's tail. Another echoing roar followed, clinging after Fritz. Fritz burst onto the campsite, yelping and sweating. Curtis was there holding a shotgun at him, rigid as an arrow shaft. Is it behind you? I didn't stop to look. Fritz gasped for breath and regained his composure. He took up position next to Curtis, aiming his rifle at the direction he had run down from. Willie slunk up behind them, holding a 6-shot revolver in each hand. I'm sorry I ran, Fritzy. I'm going to have to live with that, I reckon. I think I'm going to stop it right here and do part 2 sometime next week. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications for more book reading content like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man's Quarter channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor. I said that's a wrap, and have a nice day, y'all.